Hi, everybody. Good evening to this special event. So exciting. My name is Stephen Daly. I'm the head of marketing at ICMS, but I've got three awesome guests tonight, which I'm sure you're going to find very entertaining and get a lot of great information from them. I have, first of all, Simon Fenn, who's the Managing Director of Cushman Wakefield. Simon, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure, Stephen.
And we've also got Dan Garing, who is an ICMS graduate and a leasing analyst now at Cushman Wakefield.
Yep.
Thanks for joining us. And Stephanie Macourt, office leasing executive at JLL and is currently in Queensland. So we really appreciate you all being on board tonight. And really, the whole purpose of tonight is to dive deep into the industry, the property industry, and for our students to understand what it's really like to have a career, make a career in the property sector. So that's great. Simon, I'll start off with the first question. I believe you love rugby.
I do, mate. I did a long time ago. So just, yeah, I've seen the university develop and what you have done up on the hill there at Manly. It's wonderful to see. I just played at Manly and loved it, and it was a big part of my life as at kind of university. And yeah, it's I still have a lot of good friends and contacts through business through the rugby ties.
The rugby, okay, and tell us a little bit about how you find yourself leading Cushman Wakefield. Tell us a little bit about that journey, your career journey. I mean,
how long have you got? It's exactly from where both Dan and Stephanie are now to where I am now. It takes a bit of time. But look, I, funnily enough, got into commercial real estate rather than residential because I played rugby, which, because of the weekend work on the residential side. So it was more kind of accidental than planned. But yeah, my career started in very much like Steph in leasing and just getting in there and working on databases and getting things going a long time ago. For a company called Richard Ellis, which has now become CBRE.
Right. Okay. Yep. That's great. And so, it's been a challenging year. How have you found this year been for you and with COVID? I mean, there's been obviously ups and downs for the property sector. How have you guys been going?
Look, it's been tough for everyone, and I don't like to complain too much because, compared to some others, certainly we've had it easy, and depends on, where you are, how old you are, where you sit, whether you've got young children, and all those type of things come into it. But no, certainly been very tough. But from a performance point of view, the commercial real estate, which is what I work in, has done really well. So, sales, leasing, and valuations, businesses have been really resilient and unbelievably done exceptionally well. So that, for example, the team Dan works in Sydney CBD leasing have one of their biggest years. So kind of contradicts what you would think. So that certainly made it easier, but having people in and out of home and working with COVID's been difficult.
It's pretty, it seems to be, from my experience, that property is much broader than I ever expected it was when I was studying. I thought it was very niche. So I guess noting that and the few different things that you've mentioned now, and there is like such a range within the sector, what do you think that most of these individuals within property do have in common? Is there a single driving force, or is there kind of space for everyone?
I think there's definitely space for everyone, Steph. Everyone's different. Certainly you can see certain personalities within different divisions stand out. The brokers, the valuers. There's a definite common trait amongst them, but there is, it doesn't matter who you are, what you do, there is a spot in property for you. That's 100%. It might take you a few years to work that out, but that's okay.
Yeah, following that up, bearing in mind that it's online, what do you think is like potential career opportunities that students should be thinking about in the property sector?
Look, whether you're commercial or residential, I think the common denominator, I think, is people. Even if you're in residential, commercial, valuations, sales, leasing, it's all about people and working with people. Yeah. The property is just a function of what you're doing oddly enough. It's really a people business. So I think that's a common thing. And I think, whatever you're comfortable and you work that out in time, it doesn't have to be very hard at 20 odd years of age to work out exactly what you don't want to do, but I wouldn't stress out about that. I think just let it evolve and take on whatever your opportunities come your way.
For sure.
Yeah, I think the benefit from my experience of companies like JLL and Cushman Wakefield and CBRE and all of those sort of larger property companies is that you have so much exposure to all those things, and you might start off. I have so many colleagues that have started in vals and have moved across to capital markets and all sorts of things. So I think that would be my 2 cents, is that if you go somewhere that does a whole bunch of things, you'll probably get a bunch of exposure and you'll be able to work it out.
In saying that, but I've also seen other people go in specific kind of smaller firms and do well as well. So I just think it's so broad. You'll get opportunities, and I think it's all about your attitude and how you go in and what you do, and how positive you are. I think whether it's a bad experience or good experience, it's still worthwhile, and you learn from it. So just don't, my recommendations are just don't say no to anything. Just get in and do it the best you can, and kind of sell yourself and what you're doing, and make sure you pick up as much information as you can.
Yeah.
Cool. So in terms of more specifically the role that you've found yourself in, because I believe, Simon, you started in leasing, then moved to capital markets, and now you're in a managing director role, but your most recent sort of sector was capital markets. Is that correct?
That's right.
Cool.
Yep.
So in terms of your experience with capital markets and everything else, I guess, along the way, would you say that there is a large role of research and trends and what's happening in the industry, or is it more of a people game and more of a sales game, or do you think those numbers are just as valid?
I think it's a combination of the two of them. Really, it's a people's game, but it's the people that are able to use the information, get to know people, and know what to do with the information are probably the ones that do really well. So it's a combination of the two.
Yeah.
I actually started in vals. I recommend that for a lot of people if you can do that. It's a real, it's not as glamorous as a big sales side of things, but it gives you a real good understanding of what's, what kind of drives fundamentals, what drives value, and that's a good thing.
I've had members of my team recommend me doing time and valuations after my time as an analyst, just to get a bigger understanding and develop my knowledge in that area as well, for sure.
Yeah, it's something I've heard a lot too.
Look, you're both in leasing. My advice is do a few extra yards and spend a bit of time with the valuers and get to understand the deals of the people you're working with, what impact that has on value on the assets you're leasing. It's all linked, and you don't kind of work that out till you're older unless someone tells you. But I really recommend doing that extra bit of work, and it might be reading some of their valuation reports and really simple stuff that just puts you ahead of your competitors.
Sure.
It's a competitive market, so the better you can make yourself, the better you'll do.
You've done very well this time, Dan, with the leasing. It sounds like it. What have you learned?
I've learned so much. I kind of came in there not knowing too much, but I'm lucky to be in a really good team and coming in at a time where we've been a really successful year. I think it's almost a record year, almost twice over the budget, and it's just learning heaps, learn every day.
That's great. And it's you just recently, so you recently graduated.
Yes, recently this term. Yeah, last term it's finished.
Yeah, so that's great. Straight off the bat, in a job.
Yeah, it's exciting. It is exciting. I'll start full time next January, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I've only been working 3 days a week for the last couple of months, but I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, cool. Steph, I think you got another question.
Yeah, sorry. So I guess, we've kind of spoken a little bit about your massive exposure to lots of different things. And I'm sure that you came across rejection along the way, because that's something that people are flagging to me constantly. Just make sure your skin is fairly thick, Steph. Like, that's my general advice that I've been getting. How do you handle that rejection? How do you handle when a big deal falls over, something you've been working for months towards? Do you think this is just you having tough skin, or have you had to build it up?
No, I don't think you're born with it. I think you've got to build it up, and I think that, a lot of it comes from how you're raised and your parents, and dealing with some tough situations and not making things easy for you all the way along. You've got to, it's just part of the game, property or not. It's probably part of the game in anything you do, but it's really, it's quite, when you're working on a deal, it's really kind of identified clearly in property. But I think whatever you do, you need to have that thick skin and resilience when things don't go quite your way, and you just need to better bounce on and move forward. It's simple as that, and as hard as it is. And the longer you get in it, the bigger the deals, the more it hurts. But you just need to better move on and create as many opportunities as you can, so that there's other things to work on if things don't happen the way you want to.
So you're kind of avoiding getting fixated on any one big thing at a time, regardless of how much time it's taking.
And it probably sounds nice and tidy and neat. It's not always that good, but it's I think the more things you've got going on, the less. If you've got something else going on, it obviously clearly allows you to move forward onto something else if it doesn't work out. And that's the tough thing about property. It's not always anything you can do about it that affects, the outcome. Obviously, you have an impact, but sometimes there's things you can do everything right, and someone changes their mind, or something happens overseas, and they've bought, a big owner's bought an industrial portfolio. They don't want office anymore in Sydney. Or they want to hang on to their office in Sydney, then suddenly you're out of the game, and it's harsh.
What would be kind of some of those biggest external factors? Is it just general companies, or interest rates and global affairs?
I think
that come into it as well.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that depends on where you're at, what you're doing with, who you're dealing with. But the higher it is, it's probably more global and what's going on around the world. For example, they'll have buckets of capital that they place in certain spots, and you could be just doing something and going swimmingly, all going well, and then suddenly they've bought something else and the money's not there. So something as simple as that, completely out of your control, can happen. But it's just part of it.
When you're managing these negotiations, and like when you get towards the pointy end, like more so, what are some of your techniques you do to like stay in control of the deal that you can control?
I think everyone's got their own style, Dan, and you and Steph will develop that in time. I just think, just openly communicating, making sure the bigger the deals, the more sophisticated they generally are, and they're both, the hardest market's selling to a private, from a private, because you've got private money at all, every cent affects them. I think once you get more institutional, they're more bigger picture. Gets a little bit easier. But my advice is just make sure you're clear in what you're saying. You're very careful in what you're saying, and people know where things are at. I think if you're wishy-washy and a little bit all over the place and jump in a little bit inconsistent, you'll lose credibility very fast.
And just for the context, probably of the viewers, institutional clients, can you explain to them, I guess, what they are? Because I suppose you were early on in your career.
Look, I started off leasing and valuations, leasing, and metropolitan sales. Metropolitan sales was often dealing with private money. The institutional money is the bigger towers and so forth. It's an offshore money that it's people who are dealing for other people's money in super funds and offshore money. So it's a little bit level of sophistication, I guess, and they've got to generally have a bigger picture in mind rather than, obviously focusing on every cent and dollar.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess they're always looking for the best returns for their investors, whereas I've heard that private clients are harder to guess because you don't really know what their aims are.
And a lot of mums and dads, they don't tell you everything that they're used to doing with agents at a lower level, and it's you often don't have a level of trust, and you may not have built a relationship with them. They don't know how you operate. It just gets a little bit harder, but it's what makes you.
Yeah. So you've kind of obviously developed a fairly good approach. Did you have a fair amount of professional development? Was there a lot of support through this process for you, or was it just trial and error?
I think trial and error where I've come from, I think, but I think it's got better as you know, as the market's got more sophisticated and probably got more depth to it. But yeah, it's trial and error when I started. I didn't know what I was doing well and what I wasn't doing poorly. But I think, yeah, it's got better, but it's still such a difficult thing to outline. Like everyone's different. Some of the best brokers are completely different personalities. It's hard. So I don't think you just need to kind of make sure you listen, ask a lot of questions, and be willing to learn and develop and change if you have to. Play to your strengths and understand your weaknesses and understand yourself. So it's a bit of a journey about who you are as well as your property development, which is I guess is same as any industry.
Yeah, no, cool.
How important would you say having a mentor in the early stages or any stage of your career would be? And if so, like who was your mentor?
I think it's the best thing you could possibly do, and I recommend get one straight away outside of whatever business you're in or your family. I was lucky enough. My mentor was someone that hired me a long time ago, and we've had similar kind of very, very similar careers. And he's kind of been in agency and also management, and just so good about to talk to someone about things and do things. And we ended up working together, not working together, working together again. It's been a couple of things. It's probably closer to a mentor than what probably is in the textbook, but gee, it's helped. And he's been great to just talk to in tough times.
Yeah, for sure.
So
have you found that? Sorry, Simon.
No, you're right. So just if you can, and look at, it might not have to be property related. It can be outside of property. It's just someone who probably understands you, where you're at, what you're thinking, and you don't always get it right. You need good advice sometimes, and sometimes it's stuff you don't want to hear.
Yeah.
Have you found the management sort of part of your career particularly rewarding? Have you enjoyed adding that onto the negotiations? How have you gone with managing people?
It's hard. It really is, and anyone who tells you it isn't is lying. But it's also I love teams. I guess it's come from my rugby side and just what have you. But I love seeing teams and people work together and actually get it going and succeed. So I do get a satisfaction out of that. But Steph, it's a hard. And wear you down. People will challenge you, and particularly people we're dealing with who are kind of at an extreme level of, what makes them really, really good often can make them really difficult to deal with.
Yeah,
there are some big personalities in property.
There is, but it's good when it gets going. And I think the biggest thing in property, the biggest challenge is getting people to work together, because it's a very, often it's kind of the way it's incentivized is not always about that. But if you get that right, it works. And I'm sure you are, and Dan's really lucky to be in a team that actually work together and respect and work together with each other. It's not always the case.
Yeah, for sure. In terms of networking and building your experience, have you found that to be a particularly crucial role in your development within the industry?
Yeah, it's happened. It's happened without a lot of thought to it. I think you guys together will come through together. You won't realise that, but you do. You kind of come through property, and in 10, 20 years, you'll look at, you'll be like, you might be a client, Steph, and Dan might still be an agency or working through, whatever. You find it's the same kind of crew that come through, and I really recommend trying to keep a connection there the whole way through, because you can help each other. If you've got challenges, you can talk it through. It's a really big thing that's probably underrated, and something ICMS could probably to do and help you with, just getting teams back together and as you develop. So any little bit of help you can get, take it.
Yeah, it is actually something that on my upcoming trip to Sydney, I'm catching up with one of our ICMS graduates who was in Dan and I's cohort, who works for one of the capital funds now. And he's an analyst for them. So completely in line with what you were saying, that we're going through the process together, and he's on the other side, but and I'm appointed onto one of his properties to lease. So it's a very
It's funny.
Small.
We're all in the same class, and like there's a few boys at Colliers now. Will Franklin's in with me at Cushies as well. So it's funny seeing like everyone from like class kind of going off I know and role to get into.
Yeah, stay together and understand what they're doing, why they're doing it. I guess that's a really big thing I hadn't thought about. Like you really got to understand, why you're doing something. Like it's a young person mistake. You just got to do it without thinking why. And you've got some people who work for clients, and you do a really good lease deal and a really good incentive. You understand the value it makes for them, the building, their clients, and that's when you become a really good, broker or operator or work for a client. Vice versa. The clients that have probably had an agency experience and understand some agents are going to be really good at their jobs because they understand what they're doing and why they're doing it and how they operate. So it's a big kind of circle, and you need to work together and understand it. The more questions you can ask, the better. Just don't get caught in your own little world, which is easy to do.
Yeah.
In terms of this sort of whole network thing, I guess I've come across quite a few people, myself included. My mother is in property law, so knew a whole bunch of people in the industry, and I'm sure I know Dan's father works in property. Everybody seems to have some form of connection, but I'm sure there are a lot of property students out there listening. They're like, oh, I don't know someone. Like, what would be your suggestion of the best way to get in? Is it an internship, a graduate program, asking people for coffee, putting your name out there?
I think it's any way you can, Steph, just get in, and it could be what you see is the worst job ever, but it's a start. And if you get it, own it, impress people, away you go. That's all everyone needs is a start. It is really competitive, and if you know someone, it often helps, but not always. You need to only get you in the door. It might not, if you're not up to it, you're not doing a good job, you'll be out pretty quickly. So do everything you can to get in, and then once you get in, whatever the job is, do everything you can to make sure you're successful and you're positive. You are, and sometimes some of these jobs are not that pleasant. They're hard work. But you just got to make the most of it. You're almost selling yourself to the business. Get around, get to know other people, not just your teams, and so anything, coffee, emails, phone calls. Just don't give up, and and back yourself once you get in.
Mm-hmm. Simon, there's actually been a couple of questions that have come through our social media and on the chats, and so I'm just going to run through a few of them. One of them is one of the students says that they've walked through the city and they've seen that there's a lot of office space quite empty, obviously through COVID, and a lot of stuff saying up for lease or all that. And the question is pretty much, what are you thinking that what's going to happen in the future for those commercial properties in the city? Have you seen any trends? What's the kind of word on the street?
Look, the trend I've seen, I work in the game and you're selling your book, Stephen, obviously, but the trend I have seen is in Sydney, particularly, is people, the smaller, and Dan would know this, and Steph, the smaller tenants, kind of 500 to 2,000 square metres, upgrade into high quality space and moving into better buildings. Yeah. And we've also seen some of them moving out of the suburbs into Sydney and North Sydney CBDs. So I think that's been the key trend. The big question mark is some of the bigger users and how working from home is going to affect their footprint. That's the thing that needs to be worked through. I think it's going to be a year or 2 years before we know how that looks. And my view is each company is going to be different. The way their policies around working from home and how they operate are going to be different depending on who they are, what they do, what their business is at, what scale, whether they're growing, what the people do, whether they need to be around other people. So I think so far so good. People are coming back and moving in. And I think that I generally believe that will continue, but factual, that's what's happened so far.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say it's the same experience up in Brisbane. The bigger tenants are taking a long time to make decisions, but as a young person going in and working on smaller deals, it's not a bad time to be doing it because those tenants are ridiculously active and there's so much going on.
It's a great time to move. There's some great deals being had, and you can you can upgrade your space. And if you're in that area of size, your footprint's not going to change much whether people are working from home or not. You still need to provide the platform for them to come into. So
we're definitely seeing it's a tenants market as well. Like there's such high incentives at the moment. Tenants have so much choice where to go, and we've seen a lot more spec fit outs being put in, and fit outs still being king. So all those kind of trends coming through still.
Yeah, so if you're a small to medium business owner, you can move into a pretty fancy looking building with a really good fit out. That it's often paid for by the landlord. That's not a bad time to do that. And I guess the big question, Stephen's about the weaker buildings that haven't spent the money on them, and what happens there, whether they get created into sites or residential or student accommodation or whatever it might be. So it's
really
very dynamic, and you can ask 1,000. All my friends who work, I work in property, think the things would be really tough, but I'm like, no, they're actually quite good. It's nowhere near as bad as you think, and I think just generally the whole economy has dealt much better through the lockdown than we ever thought.
On that, I think the vacancy in Sydney is around 8%, maybe mid-7s, which is pretty good.
Yep. So, it's not far away from actually turning into growth in rents and so forth down the track. So,
yeah,
you just got to make sure you provide the best possible space for your staff and your clients to come to. And I think the city and North Sydney and other markets, certainly provide the amenity that people are after. So the restaurants are busy in town anyway.
Yeah, work out
Pubs.
Over time.
Yeah. Another question that's come through is been about leading people, and it's kind of a question: how have you looked after your people as the leader? I mean, it's really challenging through COVID. Like it's really been, and I know everywhere, everybody's talking about, it's been a challenge working from home, and parents having to look after their kids at home, and also young graduates like Dan and Steph not being able to go out and see their friends, and so it's been a real challenging time. What has been your approach? I mean, it's been challenging.
Yeah, it's been ordinary, but I just think the best thing we've done is just keep contact with people and make sure we're checking in and regular contact and talking. I think once you see someone go quiet and you're not, you should be concerned, and it's just making sure they're across it. There's not much else we're able to do, but just being this sort of awareness of where people are at, and whether it's a business line leader or a colleague, if someone's struggling, make sure that the phone call goes out to make sure they're okay, or and just understanding where they are at. We've had a lot of working mums, and they've had to do homeschooling, just not expecting them to pick up the phone or respond to an email that second. That if you didn't know that, you're not doing your job. You probably need to delve in closely to where people are at, and that's probably been a big change.
Simon, if you could sum up what has been your kind of motto in life to get you to where you are, like if you can say what has been your secret to success, what would you say to the students watching tonight, the viewers?
Oh, look, that's a good question, and I probably didn't think a lot of it through, but I think the best advice I've had is just be yourself. I think that's who you are. That's kind of defines you, and if you're not that, then you're kind of acting the whole time, and it's not real, and it's going to only last so long. So just be yourself. Do everything you can possible when you get an opportunity. I think that's the other thing. I think you'll get opportunities. They may be not quite right for you, but your attitude and the way you approach it can make it right, and make sure you learn from it. But yeah, be yourself. Is work out who you are and what your weaknesses and strengths are, and then make that adaptation. And that's not easy at 20 years of age. Don't expect a lot of people on the court to work that out, but you will. And then go, play to your strengths and work on your weaknesses. If you don't, sometimes it's not pleasant. It's not. You think you're better in certain areas, but ask someone that's a good, genuine, mentor who will tell you. and then adapt, because a lot of people can kind of go off in the wrong direction thinking there's something else and they're not. But there's certainly a spot in property, no matter who you are, what you do, from sales, leasing, research, working for an owner. There's so many different roles. So don't be too hard on yourself. Just be, there's gigs there for everyone.
Yeah. Dan and Steph, obviously very inspirational, speaking to a leader in the industry. And you both are probably, an inspiration to students that are, just starting out and realizing that, you can get a job pretty quick off the bat. Where do you both see yourselves? And I'll ask you both this question. What is your dream job? Like, where do you see yourselves in the next 10 years? Like, what's that goal?
After you, Dan.
I was about to say you go first. What I think 10 years. Well, as Simon said, I'm really excited to get experience in all different sectors. Like, I don't want to be narrowed down just yet. And I've only been here for 6 months as well. So I've just got so much to learn in the analyst role to prepare myself to become an agent. And I'm learning that every day. And I'm going out with the agents on inspections, learning what they do, learning about how to get deals done, what a database means. And I'm really excited to become a broker. That's what I want to do. But capital markets all sounds unreal as well. So, and also learning valuations, but I honestly don't really know yet, but I'll start with that.
I put you on the spot. But that's good. That's great.
I think in terms of me, I'm really happy with where I'm at the moment. It's been a really exciting few months for me, starting in the brokerage space, which I think for people who aren't in agency, it's sort of smaller deals that are sub 1,000 square meters. They're tenants that don't require quite as much negotiation, I suppose, as what Simon does. I guess is probably the easiest way to explain when we chuck around words like brokerage. But yeah, so it's been pretty exciting to work with tenants and do those negotiations and have a bunch of guidance from my team. And yeah, I'm really loving leasing. But I guess 10 years, it's interesting. It does seem to be one of those industries that you are either, especially leasing, you either stay for a very, very long time, or people tend to work out fairly quickly whether it's not for them. Which is kind of what I seem to have seen, and everyone seems to say to me. So either in 10 years I'll have stuck it out and we'll be doing some pretty high level pre-commitment development deals, or I can imagine myself going client side and working for the big owners of the world. So Dexus, Charter Hall, Mirvac. So yeah, I'm just kind of see how the next year or so goes, and then I'll probably have a better answer for you.
Yeah, more short term. I'm just trying to make sure I learn as much as possible, and I just put myself in every situation I can to get more opportunities down the track. And when they do come, hopefully I'm ready for them. That's kind of the idea.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, I've got 2 more questions, and Simon, they're both for you. The first one is from somebody online, Georgina. She asks, what are the best character traits that you can have to succeed in this competitive space, in the property space, in the property sector?
Georgina, I think, look, I think it's life. Like, I guess I'm getting older and I've got kids at similar ages. I just think resilience, it just gives you everything. You've got to be tough to bounce back, and whether it doesn't have to be straight away. It can take time and what have you, but you need to be able to take the hits, take the knocks, and survive it. And that can come in different forms and different. It doesn't have to be a deal falling over. It can be something not quite working out, but you have to bounce back and come back. Whether it's probably the best character trait, I think, in any kind of business, but particularly property. And then take that on board and then adjust if it's not, things aren't quite right. You can adjust and move in a different area if that's the case.
That's great. That's great advice. Okay, and then the last question is, we have a variety of students, mostly, students that have just finished year 12 or, taken a gap year, and they're sitting on the fence. They're not sure which direction to go, and they've got a couple of options, but property is one of the options. And what advice would you say to somebody that's thinking about studying property at the moment or on the fence? Like, do you have any advice for them?
My advice is it's so broad. That's why I love it, and it's really, the property, everyone thinks it's about the house or the office or the retail. It's really the people. And that's why I enjoy it. No 2 days are the same, because of the people you're dealing with. They're all different. And, I think it's a great career. And I think, and if it's a career that you don't end up doing, I still think it's a beneficial platform for something else, and that's why I've enjoyed it. I think if, it just creates so many opportunities, and, and if you're not quite ready yet, go and work at a bar, talk to people, get to know people. You're still training for property doing that. So, it's just, it's so broad and vast, and you get so many different areas, and, you can go become a teacher or whatever you want to do after.
Yeah.
I think it provides a great platform for a whole lot of industries.
Awesome. Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed the session, Simon. Thank you so much. I've learned a lot. I'm not a property expert. I've learned a lot, and maybe I should change my career midway. I think it's fascinating.
Hey, you'd be really good, I could tell. So let us know, and I've enjoyed it too. Once I logged in, I was very happy.
Another few minutes.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And I think I know our students and our prospective students will really appreciate you and your time that you've put in. And also thank you for taking on students for their internships. I know that you do that at Cushman Wakefield, and it's super powerful, and it's great to see that you're giving back to the next generation and investing in them. And we can see that through Dan. And so, appreciate your time tonight, and thank you so much. And also to you, Dan and Steph, thank you so much for coming on. All the best with your future careers.
Thank
you. And I can see that you both have a bright future ahead. So, yes, go for it. And
appreciate that. Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you. Thanks, Simon.
Thank you to all our viewers that watched tonight. We appreciate it. And this session will be online later for anybody else that wants to watch it. So, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Thanks, Simon.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.